Hey guys, welcome back to Jessen Reads Romance, and today we're going to be talking about what's on my August TBR. The first few books that I'm going to share with you are actually the books that I'm doing on the podcast with Juliet. I've read 4 out of 5 of these books already, but I do plan on rereading them before we record the podcast. Then I'm going to share the books that I picked for the historical romance Readathon that's happening this weekend on, I believe it's the 14th through the 16th. I will double check. I'll put the bingo card up here. I'm really excited. I haven't participated in anything like this before, so it's going to be fun, and I hope I can squeeze these all in. Then I'm going to share the books that I really hope I can finish in August. I am a mood reader, so it's not guaranteed I will get to all of these books. There might be something else that will catch my eye, and then some of the books just I might not get to, but we'll see. We'll see. I am being pretty ambitious with the amount of books that I had planned. I should have included less so that I could have some wiggle room for my mood reading tendencies, but we'll see how that all plays out. The first book that we'll be reviewing on the podcast is Transcendence by Shay Savage, and guys, I really love this book. It's so unique. It is kind of a sci-fi historical romance where the heroine accidentally time travels to like the Stone Age, and the romance is told entirely from the point of view of the hero. And he is a Neanderthal. He's nonverbal. He doesn't have language skills. And the way that these two fall in love throughout the novel is just so phenomenal. Can't wait to talk about it with Juliet. This will be her first time reading it, and I'm excited to see what she thinks about it. The next book that we're reviewing is One Hot Italian Summer by Karina Halley or Hall. I don't know how you pronounce her last name, but let me tell you, this book is so hot. I just read it a couple weeks ago and I had to wiggle stuff around so that I could put it on the podcast. This book is so good. I absolutely loved it. It's probably one of my favorite books of summer. It really made me want to go back to Italy, though I wasn't actually in the area that this novel is set in. I think it's in the Tuscany region. Our heroine is an author. She's part of a writing duo, but her writing partner did unfortunately pass away, so she's experiencing some writing block, and she's thinking about writing a new genre. She's definitely struggling with her deadline, so her agent suggests that Grace, which is our heroine's name, goes to her villa in Italy so that she can escape the dreary, I think she's from Edinburgh, and she discovers in a very funny scene that she is not the only house guest during the summer. Our hero, Claudio, is absolutely a dream. He is a single dad, and I just can't say enough, and I can't wait to talk about this on the podcast. The next one is one of my most highly anticipated reads of 2020. It is going to be the 5th book in the Hidden Legacy series. It's only the 2nd one featuring Catalina and Alessandro. I'm so excited to see where Ilona Andrews is taking us. I have not read the synopsis at all. I just know that I'm going to love it. Hidden Legacy, that whole series is one of my favorite urban fantasy series of all time, so hands down I know I'm gonna love it, and I just cannot wait to get this book in my hands. Then we'll be doing The Secret by Julie Garwood. This was my first ever read by Julie Garwood, and it was phenomenal. Our heroine, Judith, is an English woman, and she had a best friend from childhood who is Scottish. They made a pact that when her friend would have a baby, Judith would go up to Scotland and help her have the baby because she's afraid to die in childbirth. So her friend's brother-in-law comes to fetch Judith. He definitely has an impression of what an English woman's going to be. He's kind of thrown off balance when he meets Judith because she's nothing like he expected, and he thought there's no way that an English woman and a Scottish woman could actually be friends, or like their friendship from childhood. It's changed now that they're adults, and the animosity between Englishmen and Scottishmen is going to carry over into that friendship, but it didn't. And this is one of the most surprising reads. I absolutely loved it. I can't wait to talk about this. It might even be going on one of my favorite historical romances of all time. I don't know. We'll see at the end of the year. And the final book that we'll be reviewing on the podcast is Cement Heart by Beth Eamon. I discovered this author a couple years ago, and I really fell in love with this particular storyline. It is a little bit angsty, but I really do love the way that this plays out. So our hero, Lawrence Finkel, which is a really funny name for a hero. Everyone calls him Viper. He's a hockey player. And there's an accident during practice where his best friend ends up by dying, and he feels responsible for his friend's death. So he takes it upon himself to take care of his best friend's widow because she has 2 young children, and he also starts attending therapy. And his therapist suggests that he stops sleeping around. So now all of a sudden he's celibate and he's hanging out with his best friend's wife and his kids. He's definitely not a relationship person, and he hasn't really been around kids besides his friend's kids. Of course, he ends up by falling for his best friend's widow, so it is a little bit of a forbidden romance. I just really love it. It's unique. Now moving on to the books that I picked for the historical romance readathon. I'm super excited about all of these. I will put up the bingo card right here, and then I'll go over the books that I have picked for it. My first pick is Castles by Julie Garwood. Our heroine is a princess and she's orphaned. In order to keep her lands and her money, she has to do a hasty marriage. Our hero is the younger brother of Marquess, and he does enter into this marriage thinking it's going to be in name only, but I think she ends up by getting abducted, or an attempted abduction. He ends up by falling for her, and I'm really excited to see how this plays out. Again, I don't love to read too in-depth synopsis before I read a book, so that's all I know about it. I'm really excited to see what else Julie Garwood has in store for me. I have so many books now by Julie Garwood just after reading The Secret, wanting to read more by her. My next pick is My Darling Duke by Stacey Reid. Stacey Reid is a new to me author. I've been meaning to read her. She's been suggested by a lot of people on the podcast. I did buy this book a while back. It's been sitting on my Kindle, and this was just the perfect pick for the romance readathon. Has a purple cover, a new to me author, and Stacey Reid is an author of color, so I was super excited to have this one on my list. The heroine, Kitty Danvers, is in financial straits, and I think she needs to marry in order to save her family from ruin. She picks the Duke of Thornton, and I believe he was in an accident. He's disfigured, and I think he's also wheelchair bound, so people think he's mad. It has like a bit of Beauty and the Beast element to it. I'm really excited. It's one of my favorite tropes. So I'm crossing my fingers that Stacey Reid is going to be another new to me author that I'm going to have to read all of her backlist. This is a part of one of her more recent series, so I'm really excited to dive in. The next book on the list is actually the group pick. It is Lady Sophia's Lover by Lisa Kleypas. I've not read any of the Bow Street Runners series, so I'm really excited. I love Lisa Kleypas so much. She's one of my favorite authors. I just haven't had a chance to go deeper into her backlist. I'm really excited that this one was the group pick. So Lady Sophia is actually trying to ruin the hero. He's one of the most marriageable bachelors in the ton, and she's trying to ruin his reputation so that he's stuck with her. I don't know how it happens, but I believe she starts like living in his house, and I'm very curious to see how this all plays out. And the final book, I know this is a lot, 4 books. I was originally planning to do 3 books for the romance readathon, but I tried to squeeze in a 4th, and I decided to pick a book that came in my eBay mystery box haul. I'm super excited about this one. It's No Choice But Seduction by Joanna Lindsey. This did come in the haul, and I thought it was perfect for the at sea prompt because there is a sea captain. So it's not a pirate romance. He is a sea captain, I believe. He works for like the British Navy or whatever. But our heroine does get abducted, and he receives the ransom note by accident, I do believe, and so he goes after her. So I'm very curious. This will be my first Joanna Lindsey book. I believe this is one of her more recent releases. It's not one of the oldest ones on her backlist, so I'm very curious to see. I do have a couple more Joanna Lindseys lined up that I think are older than this one. And now for the books that I just hope to read during August, in no particular order. Some of them are new releases and some are books that caught my eye. The first one is Not My Romeo by Isla Madden Mills. Look at this cover. This guy's jawline is, wow. It's chiseled. Wow. Anyway, the heroine goes on a blind date. She's expecting this really studious guy, and she's really caught off guard. He's like a hunk, and he turns out to be a football player. She didn't know this, and I think they have a one-night stand. He actually wants her to sign an NDA, I'm assuming because of his career, and she signs it, Juliet Capulet, so that he can't find her. but I think they keep running into each other, and he actually tries out for community theater and is cast in the role of Romeo, and she's cast in the role of Juliet. I just thought it was very interesting, so I wanted to add it to my TBR. The next one on my list is a book that I received an ARC of. It's called Here to Stay by Adriana Herrera. Julia and her boyfriend moved from New York to Dallas, and he ends up by breaking up with her and moving back to New York, leaving her stranded in an apartment. She's trying to grin and bear it and make the most of it. She just started this new job where I believe it's a charitable organization in fashion, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have the synopsis right with me, and I don't want to read too much. I know, I'm such a weirdo. But her job is in jeopardy because the new consultant for the business wants to get rid of Julia's job. So she has to convince him that she's like invaluable and he cannot get rid of her job. I think it's gonna be an enemies to lovers romance, which you know it's my favorite. So I'm really excited to dive into this one. The next one on my list is another new release. It's the second book in Evie Dunmore's The League of Extraordinary Women. I believe the heroine is a suffragette, one of the suffragettes who is friendly with the heroine of the first novel. I am hoping that the conflict is a little bit more involved. I found that the first book was just a tad bit slow because I felt like the conflict should have been wrapped up a little bit faster, but I'm really hoping that this one is amazing. The next book on my list is a last minute addition. I have been seeing this series circulating on Goodreads and Bookstagram, so I finally decided to put it on my TBR. It is Half Truce by Claire Contreras. I believe it is a romantic suspense novel. I don't read a ton of these, but the ones I do read, I end up by enjoying immensely. This one does have a secret society, and I believe that the heroine actually is invited to the secret society, but she has ulterior motives. She's investigating something that happened to her older brother, and I believe one of her friends actually disappeared. And then she starts falling for another member of the secret society, and I think he's a star hockey player. It's like an elitist secret society group. Very curious to see what happens. The second book in this series recently released, so I've been seeing this series pop up again, and now I'm determined I need to read this. Then I plan on reading A Touch of Stone and Snow, the second book in A Gathering of Dragons by Mila Vane. I really loved the first book in the series. It was very different. It was a really long book. I think this one's going to be just as long. What's really interesting is I believe that neither of the main characters are anyone that we know from the first book. I think it's a completely different setting, a different area of this whole conglomerate of kingdoms, if you will. And the overarching plot of the destroyer is going to be in the background. I'm assuming there's going to be like a big conflict at the end of the series. But our heroine is a warrior, and she is the only survivor after a battle, and everyone believes that she's like a deserter. She's exiled and shunned, and I guess years later she actually runs into the prince of her realm who actually exiled her, but they need her help. And they were childhood friends. So I'm thinking there's going to be an enemies to lovers trope with this one, kind of like the first one. I really loved the dynamic between book one's hero and heroine, so if it's anything like that, I'm gonna love it. Then the next two books on my list are actually a continuation of a series that I started earlier this year. They're the 6th and 7th book, and I think the 7th is the final book of Janine Frost's Knight Huntress series. I want to finish up this series because I do know that they have 2 spin-offs, and everyone says that those are their favorites. Even though I love Cat and Bones to death, I cannot wait to read Vlad's, and I think Ian's the second one, so I need to finish up this series. I do like reading in order. I want to finish up the Cat and Bones series before I move on to the next 2 spin-offs. And yeah, these have to be read this month. I need to. So there's no excuse. Yeah, it's gonna be done. I promise. At least these 2 I can promise I will read this month. The next one I have on my list is another new to me author. It's The Conqueror by Brenda Joyce. I was recommended this book when I asked for more medieval historical romances. I haven't read too much about it, but I did stumble upon the heroine's name, which I cannot pronounce, so I'm just gonna call her C. But this does seem to be an enemies to lovers because our hero is actually a French warlord and he's an invader in England. I think he takes over this castle and then claims this see for his bride. I'm just assuming it's enemies to lovers. I don't want to read too much into it. I really want to be surprised with this new romance. That's how I went into The Secret by Julie Garwood and also A Kingdom of Dreams by Judith McNaughton, and I loved all of them, so I just want to be surprised. The next book I have on my list is really interesting. It is Ruthless by Rachel Van Dyken. The reason why it's interesting is I do not love mafia romances, but this cover was so gorgeous that I could not pass it up. And I also do love Rachel Van Dyken's writing style. So if anyone could write a mafia romance that I like, I trust her and I want to try her. And yeah, come on. I mean, this cover right here, which I'm putting up right here, it's to die for. I love it. It's so badass. The next book I have on my list was another recommendation from a listener of the podcast. It is Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino. I've not read anything by her before. I have seen a few of her other books circulating as well, and I kind of forgot about this. I bought it once it was recommended, and it's just been sitting collecting dust on my Kindle. I don't know anything about this romance. I kind of anticipate, I don't know where I'm getting these vibes from because I did not read the synopsis at all, but I'm kind of thinking it's going to be like a Colleen Hoover romance, a little bit angsty and long and drawn out. So I'm curious to see how I'm going to react to this one. I do have another one of her books on my list actually. It's Swear on This Life, and I haven't read anything about this either, but I'm really curious because a couple of people have recommended this author. I'm intrigued. I have them on my Kindle and I need to read them, so I put them on this list to kind of hold myself accountable. The next book on my list I'm really excited about. It's Love and Let Spy by Shanna Galen. Juliet actually introduced me to Shanna Galen as a historical romance author, and I don't know why I haven't read her before. I really love her writing style. It's humorous and fun. I loved Earls Just Want to Have Fun so much. I actually have a couple of her books sitting on my bookshelf that I haven't read, and this one was on my Kindle, so I plan on reading this one because our heroine is actually an agent, and I think her name is Jane Bond, B-O-N-D-E. So this is gonna be so great. I just cannot wait to read this book. The next one I recently added to my TBR. I received this book in my mystery box from eBay. It is Stranger in My Arms by Lisa Kleypas. This is one of her books from her backlist that I have not read before. I was really excited to get it, and the step back's really pretty. I love the cutout of this cover. It's really awesome. The step back's really pretty. But this is a married couple romance. I do believe that they had sort of a passionless romance, and then her husband's assumed dead. I don't know what happened there, but he comes back from the dead years later, and he's nothing like what she remembers he was when they first married. He's like a changed man, and I cannot wait. I'm so excited. So excited for this one. The next one is also from my eBay mystery box. It is Whitney, My Love by Judith McNaughton. The heroine plans on marrying her childhood crush, but her father, I believe, promises her to this duke, and she's not happy about it at all. I'm assuming since she wants to marry somebody else that this is going to be an enemies to lovers romance. It's gonna be so good. I can't wait. And the final book I have on my list is kind of a wild card. I haven't read anything by this author, and y'all might be like freaking out about this, but it is From Blood and Ash by Jennifer Armentrout. I haven't read much about this book, but I've really been meaning to try out this author. I do believe that this is a new adult romance, and it's fantasy or paranormal. I've been seeing this book around a lot, and it also has a title that's kind of similar to A Heart of Blood and Ashes. I kept getting these two mixed up in my head when I would think about them. It will be my first book by Jennifer Armentrout. I'm hoping it is phenomenal and amazing because everyone seems to love her. So I want to try her out. I want to check her out. Alright guys, so that is it for my August TBR. We'll see if I get to all these books. I will check in with you at the end of this month and we'll go over what I actually read. Let me know in the comments what you plan on reading in August. Are there some new releases that you're really excited about? Or some books that you've been meaning to get to that you plan on reading this August? And don't forget to like the video and click subscribe so that you're notified on all of my future videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, and remember, life's better with a little HEA. Bye guys!